Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at the website. It's horrormakesushappy.com. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a good website.
Yes.
Before we get started, this is the trigger warning. We're going to be talking about some disturbing things, such as horror culture and horror things and things. But no, seriously, we're going to be talking about some dark things, topics such as...
Potentially.
But we're potentially going to be talking about... Look, this is the liability section, all right? We're going to be talking about things that could involve subjects that could be sensitive. So
trigger warning.
Things like that offend you, maybe take a moment, think about it, and come back. But if that's your cup of tea, listen to us talk about messed up stuff.
Right. And also, if some of these episodes do go a little on the long side, so if things, for whatever reason, you need to dip out, we do strongly suggest you come back and check out the last 15-20 minutes. Usually that's some good stuff, too. Coming
up in the future, we're going to be speaking with Rodrigo Godinho, president of Rue Morgue website and Rue Morgue TV, Tyler Dupay, managing editor for Wicked Horror TV, and staff writer for Dread Central. But today, we have the company of Rebekah Kennedy, an actress and producer best known for such works as Two Witches, Bastard, A Dark Foe, and House Hunting.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Our pleasure. Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to pitch whatever it is you're currently working on?
So as you mentioned, Two Witches, it is actually out now on Arrow Video for those that, want to start their Halloween right now. If you don't have Arrow and you don't want to do that, they do a free 30-day trial. If they don't want to do that, it'll also be on Amazon, iTunes, VOD, all those good things on the 17th, and a gorgeous Blu-ray on October 18th.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and it's in the US, UK, Canada, and then also internationally as well, like Australia, New Zealand, all those good places. So people should hopefully check it out. Yeah.
This won't air until after Halloween, but for all the people who do have access to that stuff, it's nice that those are all dropping before Halloween. So
yes, and for people that especially don't want their Halloween to end, this is a great movie to check out.
I have heard told Halloween is every day.
Yes. So, people that, and also a nice thing about it too, is that part of it takes place at the most wonderful time of the year. So even at Christmas time, you can still check it out.
Okay.
Some people take offense to that. Halloween would be the most wonderful time of the year.
It's dual purpose. That's what I love about the horror movies that involve Christmas time, like, Black Christmas or the Silent Night series. It's like you can just watch it at Halloween and then you can watch it again around Christmas. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And, you still feel that, that love, that feeling in your heart.
Mm-hmm. And it's also good for couples who one person is a Halloween person and the other person is not.
There you go. Yeah, some coordination and synergy.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Basically, what we do here is we ask questions about your childhood, teenage years, and then adolescence, and try to find out what it is about horror that you particularly enjoy. So starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories about scary things?
So for me, my very first horror movie I ever watched was the It miniseries.
Okay.
And I was like 11 and I went to a birthday party of a good friend of mine. And, this was, I'm going to age myself here, but this was back when Blockbuster was around. And I somehow convinced her parents, I'm not really sure why, when we went to rent a movie, for her sleepover, I convinced them to let us rent it. And I definitely scarred my friend for life, but that was like, that was my first introduction to really the kind of that realm. And, as soon as I got home the next day, I asked my mom, I was like, hey, can we go to the, Blockbuster, the video store? And she's like, okay. And so we went and she's like, I could tell you were looking for something specific. And I found it and I wanted them to rent it again because I wanted to watch it again because I felt like I couldn't really watch it as much as I wanted the first time because, the girls were too busy screaming and covering their eyes and you know how 11-year-olds are. So she let us rent it again. And again, I don't know what she was probably thinking, but so that was kind of like my first introduction to it. And then I just really, and she was worried that I was going to have, nightmares because my sister, she let her watch Carrie and she was just had, a lot of nightmares after that, but I was fine. So I don't know what that says about me, but
And the fact that you sought it out.
yes, I sought it out, and that was kind of like the first movie. I don't really remember necessarily the next ones I watched until like later, but that was definitely like the first one that I remember thinking like, wow, this is really, I liked that feeling of terror and like not knowing what was going to come next, and you know, that the fright, and I don't know, I just, yeah, all that was really appealing to me.
Anything else off the top of your head come to mind?
Then I started, so I liked those. I liked, you know, those kind of horror movies, but one of my favorites, which I remember watching at the theater and being so, you know, blown away by, was The Sixth Sense, which is kind of, you know, not your typical horror in that fashion, but, you know, it's just like so well done. And then I got really into like movies that have great twists of some kind. So then I was like, you know, wanting to watch like The Others and like movies like that just have a great twist that you don't see coming. So that was kind of like the next thing. And then of course, going back and watching all the movies that I missed, you know, Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and all those that I, you know, was not alive when they first came out, but going back and, you know, watching them was a big thing. And then just finding whatever I could, even to this day, even if it's bad, I'll still watch it.
So would you say that like watching the It miniseries and Sixth Sense at a young age kind of, I don't know, triggered or began an interest in horror, and that's when you like started seeking them out and going back and watching all the ones that came out before you were around?
Definitely. That was definitely kind of gave you that feeling of like, okay, what else is there out there?
Yep.
You know, like once you discover one thing, you're like, what else? You know, and my parents are fairly, you know, conservative in the fact that like they wouldn't just let me watch anything, you know, especially if it was rated R when I was really young. They would, you know, watch it first, or even PG-13 when I was really young, just to make sure that, you know, they like trying not to scar me for life. But yeah, that definitely was, I think, the beginning of like trying to find whatever I could. And then I, you know, at the time of course, I never imagined acting in them. So that was kind of a nice, happy accident.
Yeah, the nice thing about Blockbuster, and I mean, other streaming services too now these days, but like, you know, they've got the horror section. So once you got into it, then if you had a Blockbuster nearby, you could just go check out whatever else was in that section. And
exactly. And we did. We had one right down the street. And, you know, this was obviously before you could just like Google what is out there. So, yeah, so I would go and like scour the, you know, this, like you said, the section of horror. And I was like, what else haven't I seen that looks good?
So you mentioned your sister had watched Carrie. Did you have anybody in your family who were fans of horror, or? Yes,
my dad and my dad's side of the family. I don't know about so much my grandfather, but my grandmother definitely, like, she doesn't get scared at anything. Like, we'll try to take her to scary movies to try to get to her, and she like won't jump. Like, she's like a stone wall. Like, I'm like trying to find a movie where that makes her like actually scared. Maybe she's scared inside and is good at pretending. I don't know. But like, you know, my mom will be like, you know, screaming in the theater, and my grandmother's just like, you know. Exactly. But my dad loves.
I've seen worse.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, I've been around. My dad loves all that stuff. And he, again, same. He'll watch kind of, even if it's bad. Like, so we share an Amazon account. So I can see, like, when I get on there, you know, you can see what people have watched recently. And at the bottom, you know, recently watched, it'll just all be these like really awful looking, like, you know, kind of thriller horror monster kind of movies, you know, like the Sharknadoes of the crime, but not, you know, not that movie specifically. So that, I think I definitely got it from them for sure.
Yeah, it made me wonder if you had maybe even seen him watching some sort of horror movie or something like that before being introduced to it, because you said you were 11 years old by that point.
Yeah.
And that's 10 years to potentially have seen him watching something.
Probably. Yeah. I sure that I did. I don't necessarily have memories of it, but I'm sure I do remember, like, because he also likes mysteries as well. So I do remember them watching a lot of like Murder, She Wrote. Obviously that's not scary, but it can be. And, you know, they would say, like, I was like 4 or 5. And they would think that I wasn't paying attention because I'd be like playing with my toys or something on the floor while they're watching. And then I would say something that would like relate to the show. And they're like, oh, she is actually watching. So I'm sure that all of that kind of influenced in his love.
Or they
for
waited
it.
until they had put you to bed and they thought you were in bed, but you're like sitting at the door with the door cracked.
Exactly, because they would always bring out the popcorn and the soda when I went to bed, and I'd be so sad to miss it, you know.
I can remember I grew up in a number of different places, but the house we the
Words.
The place that we had in Wisconsin was a 2-story house, and the bedrooms are on the second floor. And my bedroom, like if you went up the stairs, there was a landing, a flight, and then you come back around. And my bedroom was the first one there, and so I could crack open my door and crawl out to the edge of the like across that little hallway, and then I'd be at the banister looking down into the front room.
Oh, nice.
And so, you know, if I was quiet enough about opening the door, I'm sure there were many times that they found me passed out in that position, and then of course put me back in bed.
You were trying to get anything you could.
Yes,
that's funny.
Be part of the action.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So also with childhood, did you, I'm guessing, participate in Halloween?
Oh, yes. I don't remember dressing up as in anything necessarily scary. I was like, my grandmother would make a lot of my costumes. So like one year I was a pincushion.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that'd be an easy one to do.
And people thought I was a tomato, but I even had. But the crazy thing is, like, I had the measuring tape. Like, I'm like, come on, like, you know, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm a sewing tomato lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she would make it. So, like, one year I was a bee, and she made that costume, and so I wasn't necessarily like anything super scary, but I definitely loved Halloween and loved dressing up. Doing all of the Halloween activities, and I still to this day do. Like, we just went to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios last weekend, so still participate in all of those fun things.
Are you in Cali or Florida?
I'm California.
Oh,
okay.
Did Steve ask that question because he saw the same video as I did of Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood?
No, because I know that there's one over in California.
Well, yeah, okay.
And we have one in Florida, so.
Duh.
Yeah, I haven't been to the one in Florida, but
It's good. Only because I saw this video recently, and it just I don't know if anything can top this, man. It was like spot on killer clowns from outer space. They had the circus top, the big top tent, and they even had the guy outside looking for his dog. Like he would do the bit every time someone walks by.
Yeah, and he would do the part where he was looking for his dog, and then he would touch the pole and he would like get electrocuted. They did all that, like, you know, because so they did that maze a few years ago. Now I can't remember exactly what year, but it was, you know, obviously pre-pandemic. And we had never seen the movie, and so we watched the movie, and you know, it's so fun. And then we went and did the maze, and it's like spot on to the movie. Like, it's creepily so. They did such a great job emulating the movie with the maze, and it, you know, it's pretty scary with those clowns are pretty creepy. So
I'm sure they did the same thing over in Cali, but I know we had gone to the one here in Florida a couple of years, again, like you say, pre-pandemic. And one of the things that I remember enjoying about it was they would have these people in costumes who would run around through the crowd with chainsaws that didn't have chains on them, but they were working chainsaws otherwise.
Yep.
And they would turn them off every so often and kind of just like hide out and then find a group of people who were walking slowly but not really paying attention to their surroundings. And they'd like sneak up behind them and then start the chainsaw right behind them.
Yeah. Yep.
Freak them out.
Yeah, that's always fun. We love, like, because when we go, we always do the express pass because the lines get so long. You know, who wants to wait 3 hours for, you know, 5-minute maze? But
right.
So we'll people watch at some point, you know, take a break and sit down, and like we love to watch the guys, you know, or women creep up on people that are totally not paying attention. And, you know, and of course, like the more scared you act, the more they go after you. Like that's, you know, how it works. So, you know, somebody will scare them, and then, you know, then they freak out, and then they like try to run, and there's somebody else there. And it's, you know, it's really fun to watch all that.
Yep.
For sure.
Did you have any scary dreams when you were a kid?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, for sure. I would have like those moments, and maybe this was after I watched something. I would have, like, so my room in the house I grew up in was near the front door. So like if you know, go in the front and you take a right, that's like my room was in the front. And so sometimes as a kid, I would like wake up and feel like somebody was going to like break in and I would be the first one they'd kill because I would, if you're doing it in order. So I would go and sleep on like my parents' floor or something. I wouldn't necessarily wake them up. I would just like take my pillow and my blanket and sleep on the floor and I'd feel a little bit better. Maybe it was because I was watching all those scary things.
Could be.
I don't know. I mean, they never really bothered me when I watched them, and it was just like random. It was mostly like fear of someone breaking into my place, and I still have that sometimes.
But it's kind of funny because it answers the next question I was going to ask, which is any reoccurring dreams.
It's like I don't necessarily like have a recurring nightmare or like the same dream over and over. It's more or less like my fear when I'm awake of or waking up and thinking that like someone is in the room or someone is going to be in the room. Yeah, it's more that, I think, or just knowing that like people break into houses and hurt people.
Yeah.
As I'm laughing, so funny.
You're right. Did you ever have anything actually terrifying in real life happen when you were a kid?
I guess like one time, this was like scary at the time because I was like maybe like 8. We were driving home late from something and there was a couch in the road and we hit the couch, and that was kind of scary at the time because
a whole ass couch. That'll be kind of scary.
A whole ass couch, and we couldn't get out of the way because it was like by the time you saw it, it was too late to like swerve. And so my mom just like braced and was like, hold on, and we just hit it. Because there's not
probably fell off somebody's truck when they're moving
that you could do. Yeah. So that was kind of scary, I guess. If I think of anything else while we're talking, I'll be like, I thought of something and I'll let you know.
That is the other reason that we break these up into the 3 sections, because that often does happen. So inverse of that question. So was there a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm, safe, blissful, at peace?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think when I was younger, so I've wanted to be an actor since I was like 4. Like my mom took me to my first play and it's children's play, and I saw it and I immediately was like, I want to do that. And my mom was like, yeah, okay, you're 4. Like, what do you know? Probably not that mean, but it's like
you and everybody else.
Right. Exactly. I had an older sister who was doing a lot of stuff. I was doing a lot of stuff. It was not really in the cards at the time. And I felt like I kept bringing it up, and I felt, it's not like my parents weren't listening. They were super supportive, but I probably felt very restless and really finding what I wanted to do, I guess. Cause a lot of kids played sports, and I tried and I was terrible. I did dance, which that was, I did well in that, but I didn't have like the sports that, a lot of kids were doing. Mm-hmm. So when I was 12, finally, I tried out for the cheerleading squad and I didn't make it. Which is really sad. And all my friends were doing it and I was really devastated. And finally my mom was like, all right, do you want to still try this acting thing? And I was like, yes, I do. So she found me like this children's theater that basically like anybody that wanted to be in it could do it. Cause she's like, I don't know if you're going to like this. Like, I'm not going to spend a bunch of money on like, just, it was like minimal money. See if you even like enjoy it. And then we'll go from there. And she put me in there and then I literally never looked back. But at the time, I remember just like having this feeling, just like so much joy and like, this is home and this is where I was meant to be. And then I just like never stopped. And so I really had so much fun and joy and peace doing that and just knowing that like, what's next, and enjoying the experience and not feeling all that pressure of like needing to like land work, quote unquote, because there was no one counting on me to pay anything. So
right. I'm curious about when you say that you felt like this is where you were meant to be. Do you have any idea why that might have been?
I think it goes back to like that feeling of just utter joy, the peace, I knew I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I don't even know necessarily at the time if I knew why. It just felt right. It's like when you find that thing you're really good at, and back then I don't even know if I was that good, but I just felt like this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't even know necessarily why. That's a great question, because I've never really thought about like when you find that thing, like why, how do you know?
Right. being called to it is interesting, but if you can figure out, like, put your finger on what about it calls you to it, is both interesting and a separate conversation sometimes.
Right. Because like now, obviously, like I know that, I love acting. I love figuring out the character and how they work and how they tick and how they're like me and not like me, and being on the set and, or on the stage rehearsing, or, working with other actors, it's like that. Now I know all of that now. Back then, it was mostly for fun. I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't working on characters. I was just, because the first time I went in, I missed the audition. So they just, started putting me in scenes. And I think, maybe while I was doing it, I was having so much fun that was like, that felt right, versus doing something that isn't fun or doesn't feel fun and like forcing yourself to do it because you're quote unquote good at it, but you're not actually enjoying it.
And that's the tough question to answer, is to go, well, why is this fun for me? Why do I enjoy it so much?
Right.
I know for me, like it didn't come to me until many years later, but my day job, quote unquote, is I work in IT. I'm a network engineer, and specifically network engineers, our role is to build circuits between different sites and build the networks that allow communication among different computers and different systems. And it wasn't until many years later that I saw a connection between that and also something else that I enjoyed doing in my personal life, which is, if I have friends who are having a conversation, but they're not quite understanding each other, I always have enjoyed playing mediator and helping them. Like, because sometimes you'll have friends who are saying the same thing, but they don't realize that they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to explain to them, no, you're on the same page. This is, you mean this and you mean this. And then they go, oh, yeah. But the common denominator in both of those things is facilitating communication. But I couldn't figure that out until many years after I had already been into the career. And then when I realized that, I go, oh, that makes a lot more sense now, because that's what I'm doing with my computer networking, is I'm facilitating communication. And there's also rules that you have to follow in terms of, like, when you design a network, they're like, okay, we want this to be able to talk to this, but we don't want this other thing to be able to talk to that. So, there's complexities there, but it's still the same general concept.
VLANs.
Yes. Chris also works in IT, so he knows some of that.
No, but that's an interesting take on it. It's like you don't really know or understand what drives you as far as what draws you into a craft until you've been working at it for a while, is kind of what I took away from that.
And in my case, it wasn't just that. It was also noticing something else in my life that had a similar quality. And that's when I was like, oh, there's a connection there.
Yeah, and I've always loved to play pretend, even from when I was very little. I love dolls. I had, several doll houses, tons of dolls. And, they would be a family, or they would be a teacher. I had dolls that would do gymnastics and swimming and diving and all this weird stuff. From a very young age, my imagination was big. So I think that also, like you said, kind of, when I look back at it, like facilitated into like why I wanted to be an actor, because it's all about imagination and being, doing and being things that aren't, not your life, and getting to escape into something different. And I think now, if anyone has watched my work or will watch my work, I in a lot of dark material, dark roles, kind of quirky, unique, interesting. And I think I'm drawn to that because my life was pretty normal, relatively normal, as a childhood can be. And so now that's what excites me and interests me, is like worlds that I am not in. Right.
Abnormal things that are different than what you've already experienced.
Exactly. Because for me, like playing myself or playing isn't interesting to me. It works for some people, and that's great. Never knock that. But for me personally, it's like, give me something that is not of this world.
Like witches.
Yeah, like witches. Yes. First time playing a witch. Yes.
So some of our previous guests have reported that there's sort of like a dividing line, where in their childhood, before this dividing line, they were scared by horror, and after the dividing line, they now enjoyed horror. It sounded like, that if your first memory is with it, that sounded more enjoyment. Do you remember ever being afraid of anything like horror related in your childhood, or was it all joy?
I don't remember being afraid. I mean, there's obviously like some things maybe filtered in because, you know, you always have those like nightmares, but even, you know, normal people that don't watch horror movies have nightmares. So those are always there, but there was never a time where I remember like, oh, I can't watch, you know, I'm too scared. Like I go to Halloween Horror Nights, like we talked about, because I want to get the scares, and I'm like disappointed if I miss it or somebody else in front of me gets it. I'm like, no, like that was for, you know, like, so
that was for me.
That was for me. So we have this, you know, because they file you in like, and so like we'll walk slow so that we get separated from the group in front of us. Okay. And then, you know, so that we'll get the scares. Cause I'm like, you know, that's what we're paying for is like you know, the heart jump and that, you know, it's like talking about like, wow, that was really, really good. They got you good. So like, yeah, I've never really had a time where I didn't watch or didn't enjoy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Shoot, what did I want to ask? You mentioned, you know, having this, your father's side of the family were horror fans as well. Did you ever have any or remember any time then when they maybe sat you down and discussed horror with you or said, you know, this is supposed to be entertainment or this is stuff to laugh at, or maybe times that you recall seeing your father or grandmother laughing at something and realizing, okay, this isn't something that I need to be afraid of?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think we ever had that conversation. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was kind of just
understood.
Yeah, we didn't have a conversation, but we definitely, I think, watching it with them, and that, you know, and seeing my dad's like joy for it and love for them as well, kind of just like was the conversation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of things I've actually never thought about. So these are great to like go back and think.
Mm-hmm. If you know that they're watching things before you are because they are trying to protect you, you know,
right.
When you do then get the approval to see something, that can also be part of what takes away some of the fear too, because you have the confirmation of, okay, they think that this is okay for me.
Yeah, it's like a nonverbal cue.
Right, that they approved it, and that, you know, because I remember I was like, I don't know, I was maybe like 9 or 10, maybe even younger, and I remember this vividly. My aunt lived in Hawaii, and she was in town, and they wanted me to go to bed because they were going to watch An Eye for an Eye. And I couldn't understand, like, why would you let me watch it with you guys? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And they're like, this is not appropriate for you, you know, when you're older, you know, like the speech you always get when you're older, you know, and of course, so I went to bed and like, obviously saw it years later. And I understand at the time why they didn't let me watch it, nor should they have, because that would have been probably too much for me at the time, because that's a totally different type of trauma.
I'm curious about that though, because did you actually remember the name of the movie from that event, or is it like you saw it later and you remembered, oh, this is that thing?
No, I remember the name of the movie because I was like, I made it a big deal. Like I was like, I don't understand why you won't let me watch it with, like, why do I have to go to bed? Like, I want to watch this movie because they were talking about it. And my mom was like, no, this is not one that's appropriate. Like, you know, when you're older, you can see it. And like now, you know, it's like, I get it now. At the time I was very upset because I am still like that. I have FOMO really bad, and I don't like to not be a part of things. So especially back when I was little, I so badly wanted to be a part of it. And it was, you know, past my bedtime. It wasn't like they could have picked an animated movie, but they chose not to. Like, I was supposed to be in bed.
Said, no, this is our time.
Yeah, basically, which, you know, as I don't have kids yet, but as an adult, I understand.
Yes. I was just amused by that because until you answered the question, and I wasn't sure whether or not you had remembered the name of the movie. Like you said, it was around 11. So if you said this was around 9 or 10, the fact that you even remembered the name of the movie that whole time, that's kind of funny in and of itself.
Right. Yeah, I think it was like I made it such a big deal at the time when it shouldn't have been, obviously. But, you know, as kids, things are huge that are really small.
Exaggerated.
You know, my aunt was in town and it was like, no, I don't want to go to bed. Like, I want to be a part of things.
So let's jump to teenagers. What are some of the, like, if you were to think of the top 3 impactful things in your teenage years, what would they be?
I'd say probably like the Scream movies for sure. Okay. At least the first one. I remember like that was such a big deal. That was a prominent one, I remember. And I can't necessarily like remember always when they came out, but as far as like when I watched it, oh my gosh, my mind's going blank. It's the one where the kids hit the guy and they think he's dead.
I know you did last summer.
Yes, I know you did last summer. I'm like, why can't I remember the name of the movie? That was a big one. You know, it's like all of those, the teen horror films were like big.
As you were a teen.
Yeah, as I was a teen.
Yeah, makes sense. Final Destination, was that around the same era?
Yes,
yeah.
Final Destination. Yeah. That was another one. It's like, I still to this day, anytime I see logs in a truck.
Right. Like that is, you want to talk about events that changed your behavior going forward. Yes, so many people cannot drive behind log trucks anymore after that film.
No.
We talked to somebody who that actually happened to.
Yeah. And she said she was like just calm as shit. The person who was in the car with her, or she was describing it to someone.
She didn't have anybody else. Yeah, she was describing it to someone else.
And they're like, "How are you not freaking out?"
Yeah.
Wait, it actually, like, they were behind it, or it actually came out?
I think if I recall correctly, it was a smaller version of that, but it was basically like a large sapling, like maybe 4 to 6 inches in diameter, came through their windshield and stuck through the car and just barely missed them. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, all right, well, I'm going to get out of the car now."
Yeah,
that would definitely be traumatizing. That would definitely, I prefer my scares in the movies, not in real life.
Yes. Virtual scares. Yes. Those are the best.
Yes.
Yeah. That's legit. Yeah. I mean, it's like even times I'm on roller coasters, I think about, like, I can't remember if it was the second one or.
And that was the third one with the roller coaster.
The third one was the roller coaster. I still think about that. It's like those movies really stick in your mind as far as like those scenes are very, they did their job.
I was about to say that means, success.
Yep. Yep. All those teen ones.
Mm-hmm. And I think most of the things that were in those movies, and I've seen the first one, but I hadn't seen the others, but like they're all things that we are all naturally afraid of, even if you hadn't seen the movie, about those things. And so they're just reflecting or capitalizing on things that we all are already afraid of.
Yeah.
Right. And things that could technically happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or have happened.
It's like even the occupational horror angle, like things that just, you encounter in day-to-day life.
Right. Like the women in the tanning bed, that like the thing gets like, they can't get it out and they're like fried to death. It's like that probably, I don't know if that's ever happened to anyone in real life, but it's definitely like could, it's like, you never know, like all of those things, like, they stick in your mind especially when you're in the situation, you're like thinking about it even more.
Right. You're right there.
Is
like,
this going to kill me?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, so Scream, I know what you did last summer. Final Destination, I think we commented that these are all teen movies, so there was some definite identification in the sense of self-identifying with the protagonists in these movies. Mm-hmm. Anything else jump out to you as being important to you?
In teen years, I feel like those were the biggest ones that everybody was talking about, and if you hadn't seen, you were missing out. You weren't with it. Yeah, if I think of anything else, I will come back. But I think those are some of the ones that I remember the most having an impact.
Did you participate in Halloween as a teenager?
I did. We dressed up, I think, I'm pretty sure, pretty long, because like even just as like for fun, and then there was a point where obviously we stopped, and then in college, like, you kind of start again. And then even as adults, like I'll go to Halloween parties and everybody's dressed up. It's a big thing here in LA. So if you go to a Halloween party and you're not dressed up, you're the loser. So
yeah. You can always use that excuse. Oh, I am a sociopath, or I'm a serial killer. We look like everyone else.
What else? Yeah.
That was funny the first 5 times.
Or it's, I just got off work. Shut up. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Or it's like, we'll have like a lot of Jeffrey Dahmers maybe this year.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Because it's an easy outfit. But yeah, no, definitely it was still into like, into Halloween. I think we had some people had parties, and, with like, parents were always there when we were young.
Do you remember a favorite or least favorite costume from your teenage years?
One time I went as Punky Brewster, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed her.
I heard they're going to reboot it.
They did, right?
God.
Why?
I think it's on like Peacock, I want to say, or one of those. I don't have a least favorite that I can remember.
Well, that's good.
Why did you like the Punky Brewster one?
I don't know, it was really fun and like unique and different as far as like her style was so fun and she was such a fun character.
But still somewhat known. That's probably like always been my favorite costumes. It's like something that, you know, is known, it's niche. So if you know it, it's awesome, but it's not like common, like you said.
Right. Like that's the hard thing is trying to find stuff that like not everybody else will be dressed up as.
Yeah.
Is tough.
Did you have any really scary dreams as a teen or reoccurring dreams? Other than the ones that we already talked about?
Yeah. I think the guy breaking in was less. Maybe.
Calm down a bit,
maybe a bit. The one that always is like the teeth falling out. I've had that one quite a few times.
Really?
I have never had that one. I've heard it's common, but I just
Yeah, or where you're running away from somebody but you can't run.
Yeah.
I hate that one because it's like you just can't get away, but you're trying and you're trying.
If there is any kind of like lucid dream option and you knew, then you know it wouldn't be a big deal. But that's not very common to have lucid dreams. So yeah, you're stuck and terrified. It sucks.
Right. Exactly. And then you're like paralyzed in sometimes when you wake up, like for a second, you can't move.
Sleep paralysis.
Yeah. I'd say those were the big ones that I can remember.
Okay.
Or the really like perfectionist part of me is like I didn't do the test or I didn't do the homework, that you're supposed to do.
Well, the teeth falling out.
Is that loss of control?
Yes, I was just going to say both teeth falling out and not being able to run away. The common denominator there is usually not, loss of power or loss of control. So I was wondering if there was something that maybe happened in your teenage years where you felt like a loss, like or a fear of not being able to control something.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense. I think as I got older, that's when I was trying to figure out where I was going to go to college, and I wanted to go to college for theater, and a lot of that stuff you can't control. It's kind of out of your hands. Nothing like majorly trauma wise, but the whole loomingness of like college and getting in, and that definitely I would say would probably have caused a lot of that.
Understandable. Let's see. Again, the inverse of that. Any time in your teens where you felt completely calm or safe or bliss? So
my junior year of high school, I was going to another school before this, and I was having just not a great time there. Academically, it was great, but they had no arts program. If you didn't play sports, you were kind of out of it. So I was struggling. I was struggling to really find where I belonged. And there was an arts magnet school, a performing arts high school in Dallas. I auditioned and I got in, and I went there my junior year. And I'd say my junior and senior year of high school were probably the best as far as the 4 years go. Freshman year always probably sucks for everyone, but I felt the most at home and the most at peace with getting to do every day at school what I love to do in addition to like outside of school. But we had, dance class and acting and all of that stuff in school, and not just like a class. I mean, it was like, these are people that are going to go on to like do this professionally. And many of them have.
To touch back on horror a little bit here. And this is not uncommon. Other guests have reported that, they'd be into horror as a child and then they'd kind of veer away from it a little bit during high school and then come back to it as an adult. But, other than the three things that you mentioned, which were kind of more centered around being a teenager and everybody was watching it, which is also kind of that fear of missing out stuff. But, other than that, it didn't sound like you were super into horror in your teenage years. But if I'm wrong about that, correct me.
No, I mean, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I think it's kind of weird when you're a teenager because you're in that weird spot where it's like nothing is cool. You know what I mean? Like where you're like trying, it's like you're secretly maybe like into stuff, but like everybody's like, oh, that's lame or whatever. And you're trying to fit in. I also was once I hit my junior year, I was also extremely busy as far as like school, and I also did acting stuff outside school. So
other priorities come in.
Other stuff started to come in. But it's funny because when I was 15, I did my first stage play, and it was called Halloween Screams, and it was horror. I can't say horror play, but like it was about this group of kids that were running this haunted house, and then it ended up being actually haunted, and I played like the ghost girl or whatever.
Well, there you go. I mean, it was just written in stone from your very first foray into acting.
Right. So there was like, maybe I wasn't like watching as many movies, but I was still in that realm. I was still enjoying that side of it. And also, you know, it's like teens are so moody and weird, and I don't know, we lose a lot of like our way, I think, and then kind of find it again, hopefully, as you're going through.
Which is a good segue to go into the adult years.
Yeah.
So in your adult years, what would you say top 3 things that are, you know, at the top of your mind in terms of horror? Like
movie wise, you mean?
Books, movies, whatever.
I'd say the Conjuring movies, the first Insidious is really sticks in my mind. Sinister, the first Sinister.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like the sequel too. It wasn't that bad.
The sequel, yeah, but the first one especially, because the sequel you already knew what was going to happen. Like you knew the
Bogle
setup, the build up. But the first one is so well done because I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah, like when the lawnmower comes out of nowhere. That is a solid jump scare right there. There are a lot of jump scare attempts in movies, but that one got me the first time.
Right, and then as an adult also have gone back to watch movies like The Exorcist. Ones that I liked and loved, but was probably maybe too young to actually really appreciate when I was younger. And now going back and watching them, you see like the brilliance of it. It's like always been brilliant, but when you're, you know, young, it just doesn't land as well, I think, for me. So going back and watching those, you know, The Shining, all of those and then I'm an avid reader, and I love thriller, mysteries, and horrors. So those are I'll read any genre, but those are the ones that I gravitate towards for sure.
Any that stick out to you, like 1 or 2?
Actually, they just came out with a trailer. It's The Cabinet End of the World, but M. Night Shyamalan is doing it. It's Knock at the Cabin, I think is what they're calling it. But it's actually based on a book by Paul Tremblay called The Cabinet End of the World, it was a brilliant book. I will not spoil it because obviously now it's a movie and that would be not right, but it is really well done. He also has another book called Head Full of Ghosts about a young girl who may or may not be possessed, and it's also really brilliant. I think they have it optioned as to make into a movie as well, or show or something. Those are 2 by him that really, obviously Stephen King is a huge influence for me, going back from starting with It. Yeah. But I love so many of his books are brilliantly written. And terrifying that often have trouble translating to the screen, but they're so just in your head. And I think it's hard to sometimes convey that on the screen. Right. Those are a couple. There's so many, but those are a few.
What did you like about The Conjuring?
I love paranormal stuff. I love Lorraine and Ed Warren really fascinate me. That the fact that the house, the room, that all the artifacts like really exists, and just all of that, you know. And of course, it's a movie, so a lot of it's going to be embellished. And you know, I know there's controversy on them as far as like what was real and what wasn't. But I still feel like those are just terrifying because it feels real to me. Like it feels like it could really happen. And like, you know, I just like remember, I think it was in the first one where they come to the house because they're going to try to help the family. And the mom is like, what if we just leave? Like, what if we just move away? You know, because they think it's in the house. And they show her face, and her face is just like her, you know, her eyes are big and her face is white. And she's like, you can leave, but it will follow you. And then they show, you know, that it's like stuck onto her, like onto the mom. And it was just like, you know, got chills. I get chills thinking about it now. That it's like, even if they moved, it would just go with them. I don't know. I like all that kind of like haunted stuff. Cool. Is interesting to me.
Wondering if there's something specific about the idea that it will go with you, like that you can't escape it, that is scary to you.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fact that you can't escape it, the fact that that's not an option.
Right. Like, oh, we'll just move. It's not as easy as that, because now it is, you know, like a growth, basically. Kind of like It Follows, you know, that the fact that like, you know, unless you passed it on, you couldn't get away from it.
And even if you do, it might come back to you.
Right. And that, you know, I think that movie is great. I mean, you know, I think that's brilliant in that premise and that concept. And I thought it was really well done as well. Mm-hmm. But the fact that like something that you just can't, it's not like a guy that's coming after you with a knife it's something that like can show up at any time and mm-hmm. you can't get rid of is terrifying.
Yeah. The paranormal angle and the fact that it's not something physical or corporeal. It's something that, it's not so easy to escape. Just like you said, it's not a guy chasing after you slowly, mind you.
Slowly.
Very slowly. But somehow still catches up.
Yeah. Never walked so slow in his life, but somehow always catches up. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What about Insidious?
I think the whole astral projection concept was really interesting. And I thought they did a brilliant job of showing that. And I remember the end where you thought they saved the day or whatever, but actually, they had like come through was just like brilliant. And of course, like the title and the music sticks in my head, that really jarring horror score. And, of course the acting was great. And I thought it was, a different, I guess I don't watch anything, but I really crave like different, like I loved Barbarian. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but
I had a chance to a couple weeks ago, but it fell through or something, Steve. But yeah, I regret not saying that. It looks really good.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. I won't spoil it, but and not at all what I expected.
That's
and I love it.
Anyone has ever said about it too is like I can't tell you what it is. It's just awesome. Go see it.
Yeah. And the trailer did a great job of not showing us anything because is my biggest pet peeve now is like you just showed us the whole movie.
Yeah.
Right? Now I don't need to see it.
That's a good point. Yeah, they did the exact opposite of what everyone's doing wrong with trailers nowadays. I didn't think about that angle.
Yeah,
Bravo.
like The Invitation, I haven't seen it yet, but they showed us the whole movie in the trailer. I was like, I already know you're the bride. They're vampires. I already know all that. Like now what is, now you're gonna have to work really hard to surprise us.
Okay.
Right. Going back for a minute to the astral projection part of it, was there something specifically that you enjoy about that?
It just is really interesting. I don't know if it actually like people claim to do it. I don't know that I don't know anyone specifically, but I just find it like really interesting that is a thought that you be able to do something like that. And also really scary too. Cause I imagine like if you woke up and you could see yourself below, like that would be terrifying. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's like all that kind of like you said, paranormal, supernatural stuff that you can't control is more scary to me, I think, than like, the Masked Man or whatever.
Right. What about Sinister?
Oh, like all of the death. I mean, it's so old, I can spoil it, right? Because it's an old movie. I mean, all of the different deaths are just like brutal and they're so cleverly done. And then, of course, the twist at the end that it's actually the child, one of the children in the family doing it was just like a really great twist. And I did not expect that at all.
Same here with that one. I mean, it's just really well done. It's similar to a lot of tropes that are in other movies, but just different enough and better enough to be really solid. I'd say my only complaint about Sinister at all would be Ethan Hawke's character is fucking stupid. Get out of the goddamn house and stop going up in the attic and messing with you. Just leave. What's wrong with you? Jesus.
People can't. They can't. They have to look. I think, and I yell at the TV all the time because it's like, why wouldn't you just leave? But I also know, like, as humans, we are so curious to our demise.
Yeah.
It's the same reason you'll slow down when a car accident happens and everybody's looking because you want to look, even though you shouldn't.
It's FOMO.
Yes. to your death, basically.
Oh, God. What about Cabin at the End of the World?
That one's hard to talk about without giving anything away.
Yeah.
I mean, they did kind of.
Let's talk about your emotions in response to.
Okay, because they do kind of tell you the premise in the trailer. So basically, the four come and one of them has to die or the end of the world happens. And that is the option they're given.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the book and the movie, I obviously haven't seen the movie yet, but hoping that it stays somewhat true to the book. But, thinking about having to decide that, but also because at first, of course, you'd be like, you're insane. Like the end of the world isn't happening. Like, this is not going to change. Like, the apocalypse is not happening. Like, you guys are insane. Like, get out of here. But then if that was like presented as if that was the real choice, that was real, is like, I don't even know. Yeah.
What'd you just say?
Bye, Felicia.
Oh.
Like, that's so hard as far as like such a question, I guess. And he, in his book, he does it brilliantly, because then you also have your child and they're young, and it's like, what choice do you make? Do you, I don't know, just a lot of emotions, a lot of big fear there, as far as like, am I selfless enough to like not choose myself? We like to think we are, but I don't know, in this situation, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Like, my initial reaction was by Felicia. Like, yeah, for the greater good. If it was the rest of the world or me, then I would just do it. But yeah, you don't know until you're in that situation.
Right. Like, we think we like to be selfless. And then it's also like, who do you decide, me or your husband, like, or your partner? It's like, who draws the short stick?
Yeah.
The one who literally draws the short stick. You draw straws. Yeah, you just do that.
So easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. So Halloween as an adult, favorite costume, least favorite costume as an adult?
One of my favorites I've done was Wednesday Addams. That one went
Nice.
over pretty well. It did. Excited for the show to come out. And least favorite, well, one year I was going to do Georgie from It, and I ordered the raincoat, and it came, and it was like all messed up.
Nah, I hate when that happens.
How was it messed up?
The yellow, the jacket was torn. It was like ripped, and there was no way to fix it. And we did get our money back, but it was like, I can't wear this. So I ended up just like going as Annabelle.
To me, it sounds like you probably could have incorporated that into.
Yeah, it could be like messed up Georgie after he got,
It just looked bad. It was also huge. It was way bigger than what it looked like in the thing. And it was just like, the perils of ordering online.
Did you get it from Wish?
I mean, basically, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up going as Annabelle, which was fine. But it was like last minute. So I didn't have a lot of time to like really work on it. And so a lot of people didn't have any clue who I was, but that's okay. But
is there anything that you've been terrified of as an adult in real life?
So like, because I've lost some friends recently, and I'm not so scared of the death part, like dying or being dead, because you won't know, right? You're dead.
Right.
But it's the dying part is terrifying to me, because I don't want to die in like some horrible way. Like, I'd prefer, like, my grandmother just died in her sleep. Like, she just passed away. And that's how I'd prefer. If we had a choice when, she was 95. So that would be great.
It's like that joke about wanting to die in my sleep like my grandfather and not screaming in terror like his passengers.
Like his passengers.
Oh, I've not heard that one. That's good.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's me. That'll be me.
Actually, it occurred to me, did we ask that question for your teen years? I don't remember if we did.
I don't think so.
Anything scary happen in your teen years in real life?
I mean, not as a teen, but as an adult, I'm pretty sure our first apartment was haunted.
Okay.
And then we found out that a woman had been murdered there. And when we were going to move out, I was like, why wouldn't you tell us before?
Because then you wouldn't have bought the apartment.
Right. Yeah. But funnily, not funny. This is not funny. I shouldn't have said that. Oddly enough, that we bought a house last August, and the woman died in the house, but peacefully in her sleep. She was old. And I was like, everybody's like, it would be fitting that you would buy a house that somebody died in.
I mean, at this day and age, how common is it to not get a house where someone has died in it?
What's funny is I was just going to comment that I retweeted a tweet that said I would respect ghost hunters a lot more if even once they would come into a house and go, nope, not haunted.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's always haunted by 1,800 people. Like, what about people died last week? It's like, no, my father-in-law is a firefighter, and he said it's so common for people to die in their house.
Yes.
That, but I'm just fitting for me for sure.
So inverse again, any time as an adult where you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Do we ever as adults?
Nope. That's extinct.
That's extinct. I'm trying to think. When I'm doing something I love, whether it be acting or my husband and I travel a lot, just try to have fun together. Those times for sure. Of course, a lot of it is spent worrying over things that you shouldn't worry about, but you still do. Not trusting, just worrying about the next day, worrying about your career, worrying about if you work, worrying about blah, blah, blah. So trying to find those moments is really important because they are not all the time.
True. So next couple questions. These last 10 questions are over your entire life, not just any one section, and not necessarily related to horror. They could be any genre, but I'll ask the first two questions at the same time because it could be the same answer for both or potentially different answers. But what is your favorite movie, and what movie would you say you've watched more times than any other?
I'll be honest, I hate that question of what's your favorite movie. I hate that question.
We understand that it could change from moment to moment, but usually the first thing that pops to mind does for a reason.
Okay, Sixth Sense is probably one of my favorites. I mean, I have many favorites, but that one, I just rewatched it recently again, and I still was bawling the whole time.
Why?
I think Haley Joel Osment's fear is just so real.
He sees dead people, I mean, that's real. That's identifiable.
But his acting is
you're right.
I mean, it's just...
He's such an underrated actor, Yeah. I mean, Tusk, great.
Yeah. I struggle to think of another performance, especially from a child, but even from an adult, where the fear was that palpable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, everybody jokes about it all the time. You hear that I see dead people line, but you're right. If you just picture that scene in your head, he's fucking good.
Yeah, so good. So good.
What movie would you say you watch more times than any other? And again, this doesn't have to be horror. It could be.
I'm just going to go with my first instinct because these are hard to answer because there's I just watch tons of movies. The Devil Wears Prada, I can watch that quite a few. I've seen that many times.
Okay.
And every time it's on TV, I'll watch it, even though I know it's going to happen.
What do you like about that one?
I mean, Meryl Streep is so brilliant. I mean, I just love her as an actor, but especially in that, she just, I don't know, there's just so many, she just made a character that could have been really campy and lame, just be really someone you remember and you remember things that they do. And that to me is a sign of a great performance when I can tell you things they did in it. Mm-hmm. And the movie's just really fun and I can't say heartwarming, but just a fun watch for sure.
So I can understand the auteur part of it, of you appreciating her performance, but is there anything about those maybe quirks of her character that speak to you on a personal level?
Well, because it's interesting because everyone sees her as such a, bitch. Basically, right? For lack of a better word, but she runs that place, and not that she is a perfect person and not that she isn't cunning and she is, and she does, some things at the end that are maybe less than ethical, but she also is that place and does, it begs the question, if it was a man, would he be seen the same way? Mm-hmm. The age old question, where she just takes control of her career and is unapologetic. And there's something to be said about having being that confident and and she also knows her stuff. I mean, that's the other thing. It's it's not an act. She knows and lives that life. So there's you have to respect that too.
Okay. Do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical,
paranormal?
I mean, I hate the term elevated horror because I feel it's pretentious, but.
What is elevated horror? I've not heard that one. Is it A24 movies, I guess?
Yeah, what they consider Hereditary, Midsommar, ones that are obviously still in the horror genre, but they aren't just slap, they aren't just about killing people and moving on. Yeah, it's it's got a story. The characters are usually, strong.
That is a new one on me. Elevated horror. Yeah, it does sound pretentious.
It does. And I hate using it. But I mean, I do, like I said a million times in the interview, I'll watch anything, but I do love when I connect to the characters in some way. That's, I think, why I love The Sixth Sense so much, is because you can connect to him so easily and you want to feel what they're feeling. Mm-hmm. You want to be scared. You want to be whatever it is that they're feeling. You want to go along for that ride. So that, and I can't, Hereditary, I'll always remember the scene where she's piano wiring her neck, it's like, or the girl gets her head, chopped off like immediately, not immediately, but by the tree, by the trunk, things like that, where you're just like, those scenes just like stick in your mind forever. Yeah.
It's funny that you say, what essentially would be like an auteur part of it, because the thing that I think, and Chris pointed it out too, that the thing that keeps jumping out to me is supernatural stuff. From childhood, there was The Sixth Sense.
Mm-hmm.
Insidious.
What else was there? There was Insidious.
The
you
Conjuring.
can maybe make the argument with, it. What else was there? The Conjuring. What else? There was something else that you mentioned that I thought was related
Sinister?
to supernatural.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe the stuff about the haunted apartment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. No, I do definitely. If those come out, I will see them. Like, I don't know if you guys have read Mr. Harrigan's If It Bleeds. Like, Mr. Harrigan's Phone is coming out on Netflix, and that's a more supernatural movie. If you've read the short story, I don't want to give anything away, obviously, but that's coming out, I think, on Netflix in a few days, and I'm really excited about it, and hopefully that it's good. And that's a supernatural take on a movie. So no, those are definitely, like, if they're there, like, I will see them and want to see them for sure.
The other things that have jumped out to me in this call, you've mentioned fear of missing out a few times, and joy,
that FOMO,
which is
real.
kind of tied to the FOMO, and also power or lack thereof has come up a couple times. There was the childhood dreams about the intruders in the house, the teeth falling out and not being able to run away. That's related to power.
Mm-hmm.
What else was there? In a way, even maybe The Devil Wears Prada, because that character is yeah. So there's some stuff there potentially. Do you have any idea why it is that you are attracted to either the supernatural and or power elements? Or do you think those are important things to you, or are we misreading this?
No, you're not misreading. I don't know if it's like necessarily important as far as like, or I'm just like drawn to watching them, like that they're fast. I find them fascinating because it's things that you can't explain. The guy with the mask chasing you, like, that's obvious, right? Like, you get it. Like, there's not, like, it doesn't really need a lot of explanation as far as like, either they're crazy or you did something to them, or they're, just like out of their mind and they're going to kill everyone in their way. That's always, kind of more obvious. But I think the supernatural, like, things like that are just often you can't explain them. Mm-hmm. And that is like just really interesting to me. And I don't really know if I can explain it well, but I don't know. I just find that like, so just like, I don't know, because maybe the control in me wants to be able to explain it and like figure it out, but you can't because it's beyond the unexplainable. And like, why,
Right.
And like, is it a ghost? Is it something else? I don't know, like the ghosts, or do you believe in ghosts? Like, that whole thing is just like, there's so many ways to go to answer that question. And so many things with people, different opinions that people have on it. So I think those are things you can discuss for like hours with people,
So
I don't know
about these fascinations with potentially power or things that you can't control. Why horror? Because aren't there other stories and other genres that speak to those? Or do you also find stories that speak to those in other genres equally as interesting as the horror genre?
Yeah, as well. I would say both. Like, I also love, this is kind of random, but does click in, heist movies, like where there's something about me watching or even reading. So I love thrillers because they usually have some kind of crazy twist in them. And you're like, while you're reading it, you're trying to figure it out. Or maybe you're just trying to read for the fun and try not to, figure it out too soon or whatever. But you're like, where your mind is just like blown. I like the horror element because there's the scary part, and there's the adrenaline rush and the heart pounding and the palms sweaty and all of that part. That's great. But, outside of that, if it's like more psychological or not necessarily horror, there's still the figuring out element that is just exciting to me.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah,
like you said, you are interested in those things in other genres too. But what you said is that horror has more extreme. Well, it's more of an extreme adrenaline rush, but that's kind of also tied with heightened. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say outcomes, but like the cost is higher. If that makes sense.
Yes, the cost is much higher.
Repercussions.
Because it often is life or death, in the horror genre.
Yeah. The stakes are higher.
There you go, stakes.
Yes, the stakes are much, much, much higher.
Did you say steak?
Are you hungry now?
Yes.
I mean, the things that I'm coming back to then are emotions, basically. I mean, both joy in doing the acting and identifying with whatever acting the character is doing. But it could be either, both joy and excitement. So, I mean, it sounds like those are the big things for you, and potentially maybe like if we were to talk about majoring and minoring as if it were a college degree, I would say, the majoring in the emotion and the minoring in the power.
Right.
If that makes sense. So really just the last question is there anything that's kind of related to this stuff or maybe not even stuff that's not related that you've thought of during this call that hasn't come up in the conversation? Just an opportunity to say something that we didn't ask about.
No, these are all amazing questions because so many of them I've just never thought about. And so I'm hoping I'm not just like blabbering on and making no sense. But, the control thing I think is interesting because there's so much, especially in this business, that is out of your control. There's so many things that people are working with you, but you're not in charge of. You're not in charge of submitting yourself. I mean, you can, but your agent, when you're at a certain level, your agent is submitting you for auditions, you're auditioning, goes to casting is deciding who they like, goes on to producers, on and on and on. And none of those things do you have control in any of it.
Mm. And there's also potentially backstabbing too.
Right.
Yeah, there's that too.
Right. Or it's not, it's not a business where you work, you guys know, if you work hard, you move up. It doesn't work that way. Right. So I think part of the control, because you can't control any of that, it's okay, what can you control? And so what I can control is the acting part, the joy, the excitement, the doing the work, doing the character. That is the only thing I have control over, really. Because again, you don't have control over if people like a movie, if they like you in the movie, if anyone, sees the movie. You don't really have control over a lot of the business. I have nothing, I cannot do anything about.
Yeah.
And as you guys have realized in this call, I'm sure that obviously I have some control issues. So it's the only thing I can control, right, is my craft and what I love and doing and loving what I do and having that joy.
Right.
I think is, basically just trying to find what you can control and loving that and trying to be okay with what you can't, which is really hard.
True.
Still and really hard.
I would even argue that it's not necessarily related to your career. I think that probably all careers have some level of office politics that we encounter in our jobs. And probably, I'm guessing here, but my experience has been, I think that the higher you go in the management hierarchy, the more pronounced those office politics become. And that you have to be better with them the higher up you go in your career, because it affects not only your job, but potentially others. And there was a book that I read back in my 20s, actually, where somebody was sharing an experience that they had where they had applied for a management position, but got turned down for it, and talked to the hiring people. And the reason that they said they were turned down was because they downplayed the importance of office politics, and the hiring manager had said that they thought that was sort of an inexperienced attitude to take, because there can be good things that also come from office politics, particularly if you're a manager. For example, if you're a middle manager and a project comes up, you sometimes want to fight to have certain projects be assigned to your team, because with those projects come the money, the budget to pursue that work. And if, for example, if you were to do the alternate and never fight for any work to come to your team, well, then at some point, what happens if your team then winds up not having any work? If the company decides to downsize, well, your group's going to be the first one that gets cut.
No. My team gets to fuck off and do nothing for a week. That's how that works.
Well, and for the week of their severance, and then they get nothing else. So
is that why I've been fired for so many jobs?
So, but there's, like I say, there's pros and cons that can come from it. But to use an analogy that I've learned from counseling and 12-step programs, one of the phrases we learn in the 12-step programs are sweeping my side of the street. And knowing what is within my property and my boundaries. It's a boundary issue, really, is learning where the boundaries are and what I'm responsible and not responsible for. And that is challenging, because what is or is not our responsibility can change depending on the situation.
Right.
Something that may be our responsibility in one situation might not be our responsibility in a different situation, and learning to navigate all that stuff definitely is a challenge. So I can definitely understand if that's something that has been important to you over the years.
Yeah, for sure. That all makes sense.
Cool.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. Like you said, it's not just my career for sure. This is what I do, so I'm relating it to it. But a lot of people, I'm sure, feel out of control or don't have control in many aspects of their life, and it's hard to sometimes let go of that and let go of the things you can't control, and be okay with that and work on the things you can. Such is life.
Yes, definitely. We definitely appreciate talking with you today. Before we wrap up, do you want to again pitch? I forget what it was that you pitched at the start. I'm sorry.
It's been an interview. We've talked about a lot of things.
Yes.
My film 2 Witches is out now on Arrow Video, or will be out on iTunes, Amazon, all those good things, the 17th. But by the time this interview comes out, it will be out for all you beautiful people. It's also on Blu-ray. As well. There's an awesome Blu-ray edition as well for anyone that wants to check that out. And it's great for the Halloween season, for the Christmas season, or any time of year for horror fans.
And we'll create a bio page for you and link to whatever it is that you want to on there, is where people, can catch up with you and find out what else that you're working on. Because we did look on your IMDb page there. You have been involved with a lot of stuff, not just horror.
Yeah, trying to, work as much as I can.
Succeeding, I would say.
Understandable.
Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It's been really fun. You guys proposed some really thought-provoking questions. So
we try. So thank you, and also to thank you to anybody out there listening. Again, please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We got a list of people there that we'd like to interview. If you would like us to add anybody to the list, or can help us get in touch with anybody who's on the list, let us know. Other than that, if you like what we're doing, tell a friend. Thanks.